Most people think a career is a series of slightly better jobs. This could look like a new job title every few years, a better brand name, or a little bit more money. I'll be the first to tell you that this is the furthest thing from a career. Understanding that there's a difference matters because a lot of smart people, especially ones that I've known who are ambitious, start feeling stuck after just a few years in the real world. They realize that nothing is really compounded and they're not actually moving towards anything. Everyone hits a point where they realize that they never actually launched a career and that they were just stacking jobs without any direction. Despite this difference, most people stay in the mindset of looking for a job and always ask themselves the question of how do I recruit for a job? When you follow job advice, you follow the same script. Open LinkedIn, scroll through postings, tailor your resume for each application, and send it into the void. Maybe you get a few interviews, maybe you even get an offer, or maybe you even get no results, but still keep doing the same thing. There's a completely different question you should be asking instead. What career am I launching? And with this new question comes a new playbook. Notice the difference. One question is about securing your next paycheck, and the other is about building something that compounds over time. One is reactive, responding to whatever is available, and the other is strategic, positioning yourself deliberately. Most people don't even realize that there is a distinction. They think that getting a job and launching a career is the same thing, but they're not. And conflating the two is quietly sabotaging your future in ways that you won't see for years. Job advice optimizes for the immediate next step. It tells you how to get hired, and it doesn't tell you how to actually build rare and valuable skills. It does not tell you how to position yourself for opportunities that don't exist yet, and it certainly does not tell you how to create optionality a few years from now. So let me show you why this matters. Cal Newport has a framework that explains this perfectly. In his book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, he says most people operate with what he calls the passion mindset. They're focused on what the world can do for them, and they're asking what job matches my interests, what company will give me the best experience, or what role will make me happy. This sounds reasonable, but it puts you in a fundamentally passive position. You're waiting for the world to present you with the right opportunity, and you're responding to job postings hoping that someone picks you. The alternative is what Newport calls the craftsman mindset. You focus on what you can offer the world. You ask, what rare and valuable skills can I build? What can I get good at that other people can't easily replicate? And what expertise can I develop that creates leverage? Move past just finding a job and start thinking about actually launching your career and having a craftsman mindset. This difference will compound over times that are invisible at first. When you're in job finding mode, you're always reacting. A company posts a role and you apply. A recruiter reaches out and you take the call. Your friend tells you about an opening and you send a resume. You're playing defense and are responding to whatever opportunities happen to cross your path. When you're in career building mode, however, you're choosing roles based off of what fits you. The problem is that no one tells you that this distinction exists, and you optimize constantly for just getting in. The thing is though, once you're on the hamster wheel of finding the next job, it's impossible to get off. You're too busy applying, interviewing, onboarding, proving yourself in the next role, and realizing it's not quite right, and then starting the cycle over again. You never actually stop to build anything for yourself. You just keep moving forward a little bit. And the hidden cost of this approach is that you're burning through the most valuable resource you have, which is time in your 20s where the compounding actually matters. So what does it actually mean to think about launching a career instead of just finding a job? Let's go back to Cal Newport's framework. He argues that the key to a great career isn't finding your passion necessarily. It's about building what he calls career capital. Career capital is rare and valuable skills that you can trade for the kind of work that you actually want to do. Think of it like this. The most desirable jobs are obviously scarce. Everybody wants autonomy, freedom, interesting problems, good pay, and the ability to make it in. But you can't just ask for these things without any leverage. You have to earn them. And you earn them by becoming so good at something that the people can't ignore you. That's what career capital is. It's the expertise, the skills, the track record that gives you leverage to design the career that you want. The way most people think about jobs completely ignores this. Job thinking says, find a role that matches your interests now, while career thinking says, build skills that give you options later. So let me show you what this looks like in practice. When you get an offer, conventional ways of thinking ask, is this salary competitive? Is this a brand name that I can put on my resume? Career thinking asks, what can I learn here that I can't learn anywhere else? Who will I be working with? What does this position do in 3 years? And am I getting one step closer to the longer term goal? When you're evaluating job options, job thinking asks, which offer is the highest? Which company is the most prestigious? Career thinking asks, which path builds the most valuable skills? Which environment will push me to get better faster? When deciding whether to leave a role, job thinking optimizes for the transaction, and career thinking optimizes for the trajectory. Here's a concrete example. Two people graduate with the same degree, and person A takes the highest paying offer at a big consulting firm. It's a prestigious brand, it's a great salary, and everyone's impressed externally. Person B takes a role at a smaller company for less money. But in the smaller company, they'll be working directly with the founder on strategic projects who came from a big brand name consulting firm. 3 years later, person A has a nice resume line and has learned how to build PowerPoint decks, while person B has learned how to think strategically, built relationships with someone who's a reference for life, and has developed skills in areas that most people don't touch until they're senior level. 5 years later, person A is still applying to jobs, trying to climb the ladder, while person B is getting calls from investors and founders who want them to join their teams. Not because of where they've been, but because of what they can do. That's what career capital looks like when it's compounding. And this doesn't happen by accident. It's because person B was asking different questions and was in a completely different mindset from day one. Wasn't thinking about how can I get hired, but what am I actually building? Career capital compounds the longer that you are in that mindset. So let's trace what happens to two people over 5 years. Person A goes about their early career in a conventional way. They take a decent role, work, update their resume, and move on to the next company for a 10% pay raise. They then do it again and again, and after 5 years, they've worked at 4 different companies, their salary has gone up steadily, and on paper they're doing just fine. But here's what they don't have. They don't really have deep expertise in anything. They can do tasks, but they don't have any real skills that are in high demand. They haven't positioned themselves in a way that will make someone say, we need to hire this person specifically. Person B is in career mode. They took their first role specifically because they learned from someone. They stayed longer than 18 months, long enough to actually get good at something, and they built relationships with people who were 2 to 3 steps ahead of them. When they did move, it was strategic. They went somewhere that let them leverage what they learned and build on top of it. After 5 years, person B wasn't just further along, they were playing a completely different game. They weren't applying to jobs anymore, but they were getting recruited for roles that weren't even posted. People were asking them for advice, and they have skills that are genuinely hard to find. The thing about compounding, though, is that it's invisible for a long time. For the first 2 or 3 years, person A might actually look like they're doing better, more companies on their resume, higher title, maybe even better pay. But around year 5, the trajectories diverge sharply, and person B starts getting more opportunities. This is where relationships become critical. People with mentors are promoted 5 times more often than people without mentors. Not 5% more, but 500% more. Your trajectory isn't just about what you know, it's about who knows what you can do. Job mode, the conventional way of thinking, treats people transactionally. You connect on LinkedIn, you ask for coffee checks to pick their brain. Career mode builds relationships by being valuable first. You work with people who are better than you make yourself useful, and over time, these people become advocates who pull you into opportunities that aren't accessible through applications. The people who know what you're capable of become your career capital, and this is why the first 10 years matter more than ever. You're building both skills and a foundation of relationships with people who will create opportunities for you down the line. This isn't about grinding yourself into the ground or working 80 plus hours a week. It's about being intentional, and you're going to work anyways, so the question is whether you're being deliberate about what you're building or you're just reacting to whatever comes next. Job thinkers constantly tend to react, while career builders tend to design. This gap doesn't show up in the first year or even the second year, but by year 5, by year 10, the difference is staggering. Because one person has been just finding jobs and the other person has been building a career. So what do you actually do with this? The shift starts with the question you're asking yourself. Stop asking, how do I get a job, and start asking, what career am I building? This question changes everything. Because once you're thinking in terms of building rather than finding, different things become important. The brand name matters less, as well as the starting salary, but what you're learning, who you're learning from, and what you're positioning yourself to do next becomes more important, and the variables that matter. Here are 3 tactical shifts that you can make right now. Evaluate opportunities by which you'll learn, not just by which you'll earn. When you get an offer, or when you're deciding whether to stay in your current role, ask yourself, what will I be able to do in 2 years that I can't do now? Not what will I have on my resume, not what title I will hold, but what capabilities will I actually develop? If the answer is, I'll be better at executing the same types of tasks that I'm already doing, that's a job. If the answer is, I'll understand how to solve an entirely different class of problems, that's a career move. This doesn't mean to ignore compensation, but it means you evaluate it in context. A $75,000 role where you're building rare skills and building the right relationships is far more valuable long-term than a $95,000 role where you're just a cog in a machine and are replaceable. The second is to build career capital rather than just credentials. Credentials are things you can put on your resume: degrees, certifications, brand names, and titles. Career capital is what you can actually do that other people can't do. Credentials might get you the interview, but career capital gets you the job, and more importantly, gets you pulled into opportunities without having to apply, which is how you build a career. Cal Newport's rule is pretty simple. Focus on getting so good at something valuable that people cannot ignore you. That's much harder to do than just collecting credentials. It requires deep work, deliberate practice, and time. But it's the only thing that actually compounds in today's society. The third is to position yourself with people 2 to 3 steps ahead of you, not just your peers. Your peer group is important, and you need people who understand what you're going through, but your career trajectory is shaped by the people who are where you want to be in the next few years. Find people who are 2 or 3 steps ahead of you in the kind of career you're trying to build. Not the people at the top of the mountain, they're too far removed, but people who recently made the moves that you're trying to make. Them if you can, or if possible. And if you can't do either, study how they got to where they are, talk to them, have conversations with them, build relationships, and understand what skills they built, what decisions they made, and what they wish they'd known earlier. This is how you get the map, because people who are a few years ahead of you can tell you what actually matters versus what seems like should matter. They can tell you which skills are genuinely valuable and which are just impressive sounding. They can tell you what the path looks like from someone who's recently walked it. The people who give you job advice are usually well-meaning, but they're often either too far removed from the current market or they're operating from a playbook that simply doesn't work anymore. The people that are just a few steps ahead of you are close enough to give you actionable advice. Most people will spend their entire 20s in job finding mode, and they'll optimize for brand names with salary bumps and better titles. And in 10 years, they'll wonder why nothing really feels like it's compound. You don't really have to do that. Instead, you can launch a career. This requires you making the shift now from asking, how do I get hired, to asking, what am I actually building? You move past optimizing for the next step and into designing for the long-term game. From finding jobs to building a career, if you want the detailed playbooks on how to actually execute this, how to identify which skills compound, how to cold email, how to network, how to build relationships that matter, or how to evaluate opportunities from the lens of a career rather than just finding a job. I write about this in my weekly Substack called Future Proof. The link is in the bio. Feel free to subscribe if you want to really launch your career. Everyone's giving you advice on how to find a job, but no one's showing you how to actually launch a career.